Hi, I'm Rachel New, a dating and relationships coach, and today I'd like to talk to you about how to handle conflict in personal relationships. So I support people to have more productive conversations, and often the outcome that we're looking for in a conversation gets hijacked by escalating conflict. Sound familiar? So when I work with couples, I tell them that conflict isn't something to be avoided. There are healthy ways to disagree and to explore different perspectives. It's not healthy to repress your needs or emotions or pretend that nothing's wrong. But when conflict escalates, we can't explore together and reach a productive outcome. So the best research on conflict in relationships comes from the Gottman Institute, where 4 styles of conflict have been identified that predict relationship breakdown with very high levels of accuracy. These they call the 4 horsemen, or perhaps we should call them the 4 horse people. So the good news is that researchers have also identified what to replace them with. So I'm going to go through each one. See if you can recognise yourself, maybe, or your partner or family members in any of these 4 styles of conflict. We often copy what we grew up with, so you might hear some of these in the voices of your caregivers. So the first one is criticism. This is where you criticise the person rather than the behaviour. So you might say, "Your clothes are still on the bedroom floor after a week, you're such a slob." So that focuses on the person, calling them a slob, which makes them feel bad about themselves. So that's not going to lead to a productive outcome. Instead, we should try replacing it with a request for a change in behaviour plus a reason. Then the person doesn't feel so bad about themselves, they're given something specific that they can do, and they're given a reason. So you might say something like, "I'd really appreciate it if you could put your clothes in the dirty linen basket so that they get washed, or so that I feel like the bedroom is somewhere where I can relax, or maybe so that we can relax in the bedroom." So this reason appeals to the natural empathy in the other person, making it more likely that they're going to respond productively. You've given them something specific to do, and you've given them a reason that appeals to their empathy. So the second one is contempt, and this is the strongest predictor of relationship breakdown according to the Gottman Institute research. So this is where you might say something like, "Your inability to do basic household chores is so pathetic," or "How can your work colleagues respect you if you can't even get to places on time?" Or "That's such a ridiculous thing to say." Can you hear that in anyone's tone of voice from your family? Is it something you might catch yourself saying? It's very easy to take the moral high ground and feel superior to someone else. It makes us feel good, but it doesn't make the other person feel good. And often those are accompanied by eye rolling or a sneering expression and a very contemptuous, sneering tone of voice, which I tried not to do too much when I was reading those out. So contempt can be replaced with a gentle appeal to what's important to you. Again, trying to bring out the natural empathy in the other person. So you could say something like, "It makes me happy when we share out the household chores." Or, "It's really important to me that we're not late." What was important to you in that situation? So trying to explore your different values. And then, "I can see where you're coming from that point of view. Can I tell you something that's really important to me about this situation?" So that would be instead of, "That's a ridiculous thing to say." So that's never going to bring out the best in the other person. It's never going to encourage exploration and discussion. So that's the second one. So we've had criticism, we've had contempt, and now we're moving on to defensiveness. So this would be where you observe that your partner hasn't done the washing up, for example, and they say, "Okay, I didn't do the washing up, but you didn't send out that email." Or, "Well, why didn't you remind me?" Or, "Why are you so obsessed with such trivial things?" Or just, "Stop nagging me." All of these are intended to deflect from the behaviour that hasn't been done onto the other person or onto something else, or to minimise the importance of the job that hasn't been done. So what happens here is that the person feels very uncomfortable with what they haven't done. They can't really think about it, and so they need to move on to thinking about something else. And it can be very much a learnt pattern that has been observed in your upbringing. So instead, I'm afraid you're just going to have to apologise if you're a defensive person and accept they've got a point. You can also recognise what's important to them in your response and maybe suggest a solution for the future. Now, for some people, it's really, really hard to say sorry. It might be that it's just not familiar to you. You've never done it before. You've never observed it being done when you're in your upbringing. So you might need some professional support here to figure out why it's so hard for you to say sorry. What are you letting go of? Sometimes it's about letting go of power, feeling vulnerable. It does feel uncomfortable, but the more you practice it, the easier it gets, and you can learn to tolerate that discomfort. So some examples of better replies when you're being defensive would be, okay, I'm sorry, I'll do it now. Or, yeah, you're right, I should have done it without you having to ask me. Or, I'm sorry, I know that was important to you. I'll put a reminder on my phone for next time. So that's a solution and saying what's important to the other person. Yeah, and I know that all of these are easier said than done, so they take a lot of practice, which is why couples coaching can work really well. So the fourth of the 4 horse people is stonewalling, and this is where one person might say something like, I can't talk to you right now, or leave me alone. They might hide behind their newspaper in the old days, or these days pick up their phone. It's a way of withdrawing from the conversation because the body feels under threat. It feels attacked or it feels overwhelmed, and this is expressed physiologically with an increased heart rate, with sweating, with your blood pressure going up, and therefore it's impossible to engage in the conversation, and it makes sense that they would want to withdraw. So information processing goes out of the window, so you probably can't even hear what's being said to you, let alone process it or respond to it. Creativity and problem solving have gone, humour has gone, and empathy has gone. So in this situation, it's best to let the person leave the room and then come back a bit later. So it can take up to 20 minutes to soothe yourself and get back down to normal levels, and then come back and try again. So if you are the person leaving the room, try to plan ahead. If you know you're that kind of person, what could you do to soothe yourself? Would it be go for a run, listen to some music, do some mindfulness, or have a cup of tea and just take some time to breathe and slow down? So then hopefully you can come back, and then if you are the stonewaller, if it hasn't got to that level of escalation where you need to leave the room, then try just slowing down the conversation, not responding immediately to what's being said to you, just taking some time to recognise what's going on in your body, take some slow breaths, maybe ask, could you talk to me in a gentler tone of voice, or say, I'm feeling really anxious, I need a time out, or could we start again and be more loving towards each other? And then if you're the person getting stonewalled, then how you start the conversation is a good way to reduce the chances of the other person flooding. So use a gentle tone of voice that communicates safety to the other person's body. Try to build up some positive connection first, appreciation, a loving touch or a hug, smiling. Those things really communicate safety to the other person. And then build appreciation, warmth and friendship at other times, so when you come to have the difficult conversation, you're already in a good place. So you might want to identify your horseperson style, and try to find ways to support each other to change those. So it's a good conversation to have with each other. You know, which ones of those do you identify with, and what do you want to change? But even if any of the 4 horse people show up during your arguments, it doesn't mean that everything is doomed to failure. Research shows that as long as you can repair things after your argument, your relationship can work. You don't have to eliminate them completely. So this could involve apologising, having a hug, admitting that the other person has a point, even if you still disagree with them, using humour, and whatever else works for you. I hope that this video can give you some hope that you can change the way that you argue with your partner, and that even imperfect ways of disagreeing don't mean that your relationship is doomed. I offer workshops on productive conversations in all your relationships, personal and professional, so take a look at my website if you'd like to find out more.